Ever notice how the person who helps the least gets the most respect? That's not coincidence. It's strategy. While you're drowning in other people's problems, someone else is building an empire on strategic silence. The game is rigged, and your eagerness to help is exactly what's keeping you at the bottom. How strategic absence builds more power than constant presence. Here's the conspiracy they don't teach you in business school. The system wants you helpful and exhausted. It wants you saying yes to everything while others hoard their energy for moves that actually matter. Every time you drop everything to solve someone else's crisis, you're sending a message louder than words. My time is worthless, my priorities are negotiable, and I need your validation more than you need my expertise. Power Law 16 cuts deep. Use absence to increase respect and honor. But here's the twist. Nobody mentions, absence isn't about vanishing. It's about making your presence costly. When people know you might say no, when they understand that accessing you requires effort, suddenly, you're not just another resource. You're a privilege. There's a reason why the most influential people seem perpetually unavailable. It's not arrogance. It's mathematics. Time is finite. Attention is finite. Value is determined by scarcity. When you give infinite access to finite resources, you're not being generous. You're being foolish. And deep down, everyone knows it, including the people exploiting your availability. Let me paint you a picture. Two experts, same knowledge, same skills. One responds instantly to every request, stays late, always has time. The other takes days to respond, has strict boundaries, helps selectively. 5 years later, guess who's leading teams, and who's still doing everyone else's work? The selective one isn't smarter. They just understand that being needed is different from being valued. The brutal truth. Every instant response trains people to disrespect you. Every dropped priority teaches them your priorities don't matter. Every time you sacrifice your goals for their convenience, you're writing your own irrelevance. And the worst part, you think you're building relationships. You're actually building resentment. Theirs, because they start expecting it. Yours, because you feel used but can't stop. Ancient strategists had a principle. Never reveal the full extent of your capabilities. Hold something back, always, because once people think they've mapped your entire territory, they stop respecting your borders. They walk right in, take what they want, and leave without looking back. What would happen if you disappeared for a week? Would things fall apart, proving you're essential? Or would they simply find someone else, proving you're replaceable? That question should terrify you, because the answer reveals whether you've been building power or building a trap. Why saying yes to everything guarantees you'll be ignored? Here's something that's going to sting. The reason people keep coming back with bigger requests, harder problems, and less gratitude isn't because you're so good at helping. It's because you've trained them to see you as something between a vending machine and a doormat. Insert request, receive solution. No real relationship, no genuine respect. Just transaction after transaction until you're empty. Let's get into the psychology that nobody discusses. When you always have the answer, something sinister happens in people's perception. They stop seeing you as someone who thinks critically and start seeing you as someone who thinks for them. You become their outsourced brain. And here's the kicker. Nobody respects their calculator. They just use it and put it back in the drawer. There's an old tactical principle from historical warfare. Never commit all your forces. Always hold reserves. Why? Because the enemy respects what they can see, but they fear what they can't. When you show every technique, answer every question, solve every problem immediately, you've committed all your forces. There's nothing left to respect, nothing left to fear. You're fully mapped, fully understood, and therefore, fully dismissible. The boy who cried wolf effect applies here in reverse. When every piece of advice you give comes with the same urgency, the same availability, the same instant solution energy, it all becomes noise. Your insights lose weight. Your interventions lose impact. You could have the solution to their biggest problem, but because you've also had the solution to 47 trivial ones, they mentally file you under background support, not crucial asset. Here's where it gets darker. By solving problems before people struggle, you're stealing their education. They never feel the pain, never face the frustration, never spend hours trying different approaches. So when you swoop in with the answer, what should be gratitude becomes expectation. Of course, they solved it. They always do. You've robbed them of the journey so they can't appreciate the destination. Power Law 40 is ruthless. Despise the free lunch. What comes free is never valued. Worse, it's suspected. Why are they giving this away? What's wrong with it? Must not be worth much. When you distribute your expertise like free samples at a grocery store, you contaminate the perception of your own worth. Premium things come with barriers. Accessible things come with contempt. There's almost a conspiracy here, if you look at it right. Society pushes this narrative: be helpful, be available, be the team player. But who benefits when you give everything away? Not you. The people consuming your time, energy, and knowledge without equivalent return. Meanwhile, the ones holding back, being selective, maintaining boundaries, they're building empires while you're building burnout. And here's the part that really hurts. You're not just devaluing yourself. You're creating dependency. People stop developing their own problem-solving skills because they know you're always there. They outsource critical thinking to you. And when you finally realize you've become a crutch, it's too late. They can't walk alone anymore. And somehow, that becomes your fault too. Have you ever wondered why the person who helps occasionally but chooses their moments carefully seems to have more influence than you'll ever have? Because they understand something you don't. In the economy of respect, abundance is poverty, and scarcity is wealth. WHAT if the real power move is making people wait. Now, we're entering dangerous territory, the place where calculated generosity meets actual power. Because there's a universe of difference between being genuinely generous and being a compulsive problem solver. One builds kingdoms, the other builds invisible prisons where you're both the guard and the prisoner. Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. Delay is a weapon. When someone asks for help and you don't respond immediately, something fascinating happens in their psychology. They start valuing the response they haven't received yet. The human brain is wired to crave what it can't have immediately. It's pure neurochemistry. Dopamine, anticipation, the same substance that makes gambling and social media addictive. Historical tacticians understood this instinctively. They knew that strategic withholding isn't cruelty, it's value engineering. When you allow a slight delay, when you say, "Let me look into that and get back to you," you're accomplishing two things simultaneously: showing you take the issue seriously enough not to give a shallow response, and demonstrating that your time has cost. Here's the dark secret that people with real power know: letting others struggle briefly, even temporarily, exponentially increases appreciation for your eventual solution. If you appear and solve everything instantly, you've stolen their journey. But if they spend hours, maybe days, wrestling with the problem, feeling the weight of uncertainty, when you finally offer the solution, you're not just helpful, you're a savior. There's a fine line here, and we need to be honest about it. We're not talking about abandoning people in genuine need. We're not suggesting you ignore emergencies or let critical projects sink. What we're discussing is the difference between real urgency and emotional convenience. Most requests you receive aren't emergencies. They're people wanting to outsource the effort of thinking. Power Law 4 teaches, always say less than necessary. When you respond with too much information, too quickly, you demonstrate anxiety. And anxiety smells like weakness. But when you choose your words carefully, when you offer enough to direct, but not enough to solve completely, you force people to use their own brains. And when they do that, they grow. And people who grow with your measured help respect you infinitely more than those you carried. Think of it like resistance training. A good coach doesn't do the push-ups for the athlete. They observe, correct technique, offer strategic encouragement, but the muscle only grows when the athlete does the work themselves. Similarly, your influence only grows when you stop doing the mental work for others. The ancient codes had another principle: preserve your energy. A warrior who fights every battle is dead before the confrontation that actually matters arrives. Same applies to you. If you spend your energy solving trivial problems, You'll have nothing when the critical situation appears, and worse, people won't even value you when you actually make a difference because you've already diluted your brand. Can you remember someone who helped you but made you work for the solution? Someone who didn't hand you the answer but guided you to it. I bet you respect that person far more than the one who simply did everything for you. If this content has been valuable so far, drop strategic in the comments and tell me, when was the last time someone had to convince you to help them instead of you volunteering immediately? That answer reveals everything. If this video is making you rethink your entire approach, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Why boundaries are the foundation of real influence. If you've made it this far, and you're feeling that tightness in your chest, realizing you've wasted years being everyone's easy solution, breathe. There's still time. But let's be straight. Reclaiming lost authority is harder than never losing it in the first place. You're going to have to make people uncomfortable, and you're going to look like the villain for a while. First, let's establish the foundation. Clear boundaries are non-negotiable. You need to define, with surgical clarity, what you're willing to do and what's off the table. And here's the hard part. You need to communicate this without apologizing, without over-justifying, without leaving openings for emotional manipulation. Because people will try. They'll use phrases like, "But you always helped before," or "Ought we were close." Don't fall into that trap. The power of no is almost mystical. It's a small word carrying enormous weight. When used correctly, it doesn't close doors. It redefines terms. A well-positioned no says, "My time has value, my expertise has a price, and I choose where to invest both." And you know what's fascinating? People respect those who can say no more than those who say yes to everything. There's an even more powerful variation. Let me think about that. These 5 words are pure gold. They buy time, create anticipation, and crucially, communicate that you're not an automatic reflex. You're someone who considers, who ponders, who has criteria. Even if you already know the answer, this strategic delay repositions you from servant to advisor. Now, the part that'll seem counterintuitive: intentional unavailability. This doesn't mean disappearing off the map. It means creating patterns where you're not accessible 24/7. It means having hours when you don't respond to messages. It means letting some things wait. And the result? When you finally show up, when you finally offer your help, the impact is multiplied by 10. Ancient warrior codes had an interesting principle: energy preservation. A warrior who fights every battle is dead before the fight that really matters. Same applies to you. If you spend your energy solving trivial problems, you'll have nothing when the critical situation appears. And worse, people won't even value you anymore when you actually make a difference. Power Law 36 is brutal but necessary. Disdain things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge. This applies inversely here. When you demonstrate strategic indifference about certain requests, when you clearly don't need the validation that comes from being useful, you reverse the dynamic. Now, they're the ones who need to prove value to deserve your attention. Let's be clear about something. This isn't about becoming arrogant or inaccessible. It's about recovering balance. You can continue being a good, generous, helpful person. The difference is that now you choose when, how, and for whom. You're no longer a public resource. You're a private resource with controlled access. And here's the ultimate test. Next time someone comes with a problem, before responding, ask yourself, does this person actually need my help, or are they just avoiding their own effort? If it's the second option, your response should be a gentle redirect, not a complete solution. Are you prepared to make uncomfortable the people who got used to your unlimited availability? Because that's the price of authority, and most people aren't willing to pay it. Which is exactly why most people never have it. Why true masters help less but matter more. Let's examine the real players. People who build lasting influence, who have genuine authority, who are sought after and valued. You'll notice a pattern. They're not everywhere. They don't solve all problems. They don't say yes to everyone. In fact, they say no with impressive frequency. There's a reason for this, and it's deeper than simple time management. Masters of influence understand that every interaction is a transaction of perceived value. If you interact too much with anyone about anything, you dilute your personal brand. But if you're selective, discerning, even slightly distant, each interaction becomes an event. Each help you offer becomes memorable. Think about mentors who really made a difference in your life. Were they available 24/7? Did they respond to all your messages immediately? Probably not. What they did was show up at crucial moments with precise insights, with targeted help. And that's exactly why you remember them. The scarcity of interactions created weight. Selectivity created meaning. Here's the part many call conspiracy, but is simply sharp observation. The system rewards scarcity, whether in economics, relationships, or professional influence. Abundance creates waste and devaluation. Scarcity creates demand and appreciation. When you become strategically scarce, you force the market of attention, respect, opportunities to adjust your price upward. Selective assistance does something brilliant. It promotes independence. When you stop solving everything for everyone, people start developing their own capabilities. They learn to think, to solve, to grow. And you know what happens? They respect you more, because now you're not a crutch anymore. You're a mentor. And when they finally succeed, part of the credit goes to you, even though you did less. Ancient strategists had a saying, teach a man to fish, but there was a deeper layer few perceive. It wasn't just about giving the rod instead of the fish. It was about making the man value the fish so much that he himself sought to learn fishing. And when he finally learned, he'd treat you as the master who enabled his transformation, not as the supplier who made him dependent. Power Law 27 is crystal clear. Play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following. People who understand real power know that mystery attracts. When you don't reveal everything, when you keep some techniques secret, when you offer enough to intrigue, but not enough to fully satisfy, you create an aura, and that aura is worth more than 1,000 instant solutions. The ultimate goal isn't to be loved by everyone, it's to be a sought resource, not a default solution. When people know you're not always available, they think twice before reaching out. They prepare their questions better, they value your time more, and when you finally help, the impact is 10 times greater because they were ready to receive. There's something almost ritualistic about how real influence works, like the old mystery schools that only shared knowledge with those who proved worthy through patience and effort. Not because they were elitist, but because they understood that easy knowledge is forgotten knowledge. Earned knowledge is applied knowledge. Do you want to be everyone's WhatsApp? Or do you want to be that important call people make only when it really matters? The difference between the two is the difference between being consumed and being revered. If this video shifted your perspective, leave selective in the comments and answer me honestly. Are you ready to disappoint some people to regain your own respect? Because that's the real choice. If you made it this far, this content resonated with something in you. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share with someone who needs to stop giving too much. Use the word boundary when you share, because that's what we're building. Healthy boundaries between generosity and self-sacrifice.